Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's vlog is going to be a spoiler-filled vlog of House of Sky and Breath, the second book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. So if you're gonna watch this video, just letting you know there's going to be lots of spoilers as I have like very in-depth thoughts about this book. So if you don't want to be spoiled, this isn't the vlog for you. I had a lot of fun doing an in-depth vlog for this book, talking about all of my theories as I was reading it, having reactions to the ending. So if you're interested in that, please keep watching and let's get to the vlog. So we are officially in the spoiler section of the vlog, so you have been warned from this point on. There's going to be a whole lot of spoilers for this book. So first things first, it is Thursday the 17th and I'm officially starting this today. I started a little bit yesterday. I pretty much read the prologue. It has been a journey. I don't know if you can tell from the glaring reflection on this book, but this is my library's copy and I had originally pre-ordered this and it shipped on Monday. This book came out on Tuesday and I really wanted to start it as close to Tuesday as possible, just because with a book like this it's so easy to get spoiled if you're not like right on the jump for it. So I wanted to start it as soon as possible. I had pre-ordered it, very excited about it. My pre-order shipped on Monday and it's gone. It's not gone. I shouldn't say that. That's like very dramatic, but it doesn't have like a estimated date of delivery and I'm not really sure where it is. So it's definitely taking its sweet time getting to me. And I've already spent such a long time waiting for this book, pretty much since I finished the first one. So I did go ahead and check out my library's copy. Thankfully, there wasn't a waiting list because I just wanted to dive into this as soon as possible. So hopefully my copy gets here. It's not like a special edition or anything. I don't even think that I got the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition with the extra scene. I think it's just the regular hardback. So hopefully it gets to me soon, but I do have a copy in the meantime to read. At the end of the day, I'm not too mad about it just because I'm gonna get it eventually, but that was kind of a bummer. So I'm officially starting this today, and I say officially because yesterday I read the prologue, and if you've read it, you know the prologue, you get introduced to a new character. It's in a new location. It very much is not what you expect diving into this book. It's a completely new character. Again, like I said, completely new place. I don't even think it's on the same continent. I'd have to double check. I'm kind of bad with locations, especially in fantasy books, especially the first time around, but I think we're technically on a different continent with a new character. I'm very intrigued to kind of see how that plays into the bigger picture at whole, because of course it does. So I only read the prologue yesterday. I very much enjoyed it. I was intrigued. I kind of had some speculations about maybe what the prologue would mean, but then part one started off, chapter one, we get back to it. It's Bryce's point of view, and I will say I know that one of the biggest complaints of House on Earth and Blood was the first 200 pages, very slow, very much building up the world, building up, like introducing you to this world and the magic system and the world building and where you are. This one does not really give you any sort of like slow build up. I mean, the prologue is very, very action packed. Chapter 1 is kind of in the form of a event, kind of glossing over where the characters are, both physically and mentally, after the events of the first book. This is taking place a couple of months, I believe, after the first book. So you kind of get a breather and some familiarity in chapter 1. And then in chapter 2, we really sort of get the ball rolling. Chapter 2 and chapter 3, explosive right off the bat. And I will just say I really do enjoy and I appreciate what Sarah J. Maas is doing with Bryce and Hunt and their relationship. She's very infamous for, in her series, the first love interest is never the last love interest, and I actually don't mind that as much as some people do. Definitely, I liked it in Throne of Glass. I actually think that when you have so much romance in a fantasy story, I definitely think that, not all the time for sure, but it's nice to see the character have a couple of really meaningful relationships even, or just relationships before they find their happily ever after one true love. So I don't mind that as much as other people, but I did kind of agree. I feel like with the way Bryce and Hunt were, definitely I couldn't really see her pulling her traditional second book. We get a completely new love interest, and I really love the way that we're going to have like kind of that relationship conflict in this book with Bryce getting engaged, not of her own accord. I think that sets us up for a lot of political intrigue and a lot of plot action that way, because of course her father and her don't get along, butting heads, definitely like some political scheming and maneuvering in there. So I like it on that level. I like it how it is an obstacle between Bryce and Hunt while not being Hunt's character getting changed or Bryce's character getting changed, or them just simply not being together. I think it's really nice to have, I really like conflicts, not conflicts necessarily within relationships that are internal, but external. So I think that's going to make their relationship in this book very interesting to read. So I'm really fascinated to see how that's going to play out. That's pretty much, I'm on page 98, so that's pretty much the big thing that's happened at this point in the plot, and I do like it. So I love that drama right off the bat, just because it's not, I've definitely read plots before where there is like an engagement and our main character is being betrothed to someone she doesn't want to get betrothed to, but in a very different ways. Like I've never read about it where a character is, first of all, I feel like it's more of a YA trope. I remember reading a lot of books like that back in the day with YA, and I don't think I've ever read it in adult, especially not one where the dynamic is very different between our main character and her parents doing the betrothing, as well as our character already being like in a relationship and wanting to stay in that relationship, as opposed to just like the general sense of not wanting to be betrothed for not wanting to be betrothed, which is totally valid. But I think there's a lot of moving parts there, which I'm very interested to get into, both in Bryce's personal life, political life, and what that means for her being sort of the chosen one and the Starborn, because definitely it's not something that she wants, but I think she's going to have to figure out in this book what that means for her, and potentially if she wants to pick up the mantle for herself and take that power for herself so she can have agency, rather than kind of she wants to sweep it under the rug. But if she does that, I don't think she's going to have as much power to make her own decisions. So very interesting. I'm also intrigued that so far we've gotten Bryce's point of view, obviously we've gotten Hunt's point of view, we've gotten Rune's point of view. All of those were in the first book in the series, but we're also getting Therion's point of view. We've had one chapter with his point of view, and I'm very intrigued because that is the only chapter so far that is tied in with the prologue, which means it's going to tie in to the bigger story sooner rather than later, because we already know Bryce and Hunt know Therion, and Therion, I'm not sure. And he was a character I really enjoyed in the first book, which sounds silly to say because he really does not get a lot of page time, but just the whole setup and dynamic of like the whole underwater cities, I think it'd be really cool if we got to see that. There's like a whole underground city right next to Crescent City that we haven't seen yet, so I'm intrigued to see if maybe the world is going to expand that way as well, potentially getting to see, I forget what it's called, but like the underwater court. He didn't get a lot of page time, but therein was a character that was enjoyable enough where I'm excited to see what his point of view is going to add to this story. And at 100 pages in, that's really all I have. I'm just really excited to pick some more of this up. Like I briefly touched on before, definitely does not have, and I totally understand why House of Earth and Blood had a very slow start, because in every, I feel like, epic adult fantasy, you need a lot of world building to kind of orient yourself with the world and kind of have that info dump and world explanation before you get into the story. This one doesn't really have that at all. You already know the characters, you already know the world, at least for the most part, the setting that you're in at the moment. So this really just hits the ground running with action, getting to see our main characters again and where they are after the events of the first book. I'm very excited to keep on reading more of this. So it is Saturday morning. My book still has not shown up. It's still very strange. It's in my city and it says that it has like an exception, and it's been sitting in my city for like the past couple of days, but it still has no delivery date, no estimated delivery date, no other information. So that's a little annoying, purely for the fact that I pre-ordered this intentionally and I just wanted to read at least some of this book with my own copy, but that's neither here nor there. I did get another 100-ish or so pages into this, and I'm on page 240, and I am very, very intrigued. First of all, several reveals in this one. I really enjoy it. I feel like there's going to be, I really enjoy how this book is, you know, a fantasy rebellion like a lot of other fantasies tend to be, but it really focuses more on like the mystery of it all and uncovering secrets and almost like espionage and spy portions rather than like swords battling like combat. At least so far in the series, I really like how it's more of Bryce and her whole crew getting together and trying to figure out mysteries and do like covert operations. I really enjoy that. I'm really enjoying it. It was one of the things that I really loved about House of Earth and Blood was the kind of murder mystery that took place in a fantasy setting. So I'm really enjoying this as well for that. I love that we're getting Therion. I also love that we're getting more of Ethan as well. I really like, I think Sarah J. Maas does a really good job of putting together a big ragtag team, and she's also really good about like kind of splitting them up in kind of unique ways with pairings, not romantic pairings, but just pairings of people that you wouldn't expect. Like Therion and Ethan have spent a good deal of time in this together, just like working together, and I never would have anticipated those two characters being in the same space, but they work really well together. I'm also intrigued by the constant references in this one to how Therion and like the rest of like the people who live beneath, most of their society is not as technologically advanced as Crescent City, and neither are most of the Fae, except for the Fae that live in Crescent City. So I think that's really interesting to be reminded of in this world, that while it is a high fantasy world with an urban setting in the first one and for most of this one, most of the world is not like that, which is really intriguing. I've got to say, I do really love spending time in Crescent City. That's something that really works for me about this series, but I am interested to see if as this story gets bigger and bigger in scope, we're going to move to more like traditional fantasy settings in terms of like the technology and like the culture. I'm really intrigued by Cormac. I don't know how I feel about him yet, even though we have gotten so many revelations about his character when we found out that he was the agent. I was not even anticipating that at all. So that reveal was crazy. The whole, I feel like most of this 100 pages was just kind of reveal after reveal and really trying to bring Bryce and her friends into this new investigation where we're trying to find these two Thunderbirds, which I'm very intrigued to hear more about as well, because they were supposedly killed and made extinct by the Asteri because of the potential of their powers, and we're just getting hints that Hunt and Bryce have more power that they're not even touching. And again, I think it's super interesting that a lot of the potentially second book conflict between Bryce and Hunt are not like them breaking up and finding new love interests, but having hurdles where Bryce is going to go along with this fake engagement, so it's like a cover for her to spend more time with people aligned with the rebels to try and figure out more information about Danica and the rebellion itself. And then so that's obviously a barrier because she has to keep up those pretenses and she and Hunt can't be together like in public. But then also there's the tension of Bryce just wants to go full throttle into it, maybe not necessarily about the rebellion. She's not really wanting to take up her mantle in that yet, despite urging from people like Adis who are alluding to the fact that she has incredible power and could be one of the keys to actually keeping the rebellion alive this time. So she's not really sold on that, but she is really sold on finding Emily, who is one of the Thunderbirds, just because he's a kid, he's alone in the world, he doesn't have anyone. She's drawn to it for that aspect, you know, and I think it's going to be the traditional, oh, I only care about this kid, I want to save him and get out. But I think she is more invested in the rebellion side of things. And then we have Hunt, who's, you know, already been through rebellion, already had to watch his friends and family get killed before his eyes, and then also just like having to be enslaved for 200 years. He knows the real life consequences of a failed rebellion, so he is definitely more on the fence. He's trying to get Bryce to not join the rebellion. So I think that's going to be a very interesting kind of dynamic and conflict between them, trying to figure out like how much they should actually join this rebellion, or, you know, even any sort of action that might make it seem to the Asteri like they're joining the rebellion. So I think that's a very valid and interesting sort of dynamic and trouble, I guess, to kind of put in the story, which I really like, because again, I feel like a couple of characters have pointed it out. Bryce and Hunt got together like in very unusual circumstances. It was not the most straightforward way, the most normal way of meeting a new person. It was very much a whirlwind sort of thing with a lot of emotional trauma happening. So they were trying to take it slow before all of these things happened, and I think kind of building upon a new relationship while exploring these big picture things are really interesting. I do have a little bit of a prediction because we did find out that Rune's witch fiance is a necromancer. It was literally like one sentence in here and then quickly moved on from, but I feel like that's foreshadowing. I feel, you know, Sarah J. Maas has used it before, like the dying and being resurrected trope, or even just having characters very, very near to death and being kind of brought back from it by magic. So hearing that someone who this whole entire cast of characters is pretty close to, because Rune's engaged to her, they kind of have a back and forth in the first book, and she's a necromancer. I think someone's gonna be brought back from the dead. I don't know if it's going to pay off in this book, but because it was just explicitly mentioned, and I forget her name, I think it's Hypaxia, but she hasn't been in this yet, but she's only been brought up one time, and that was to say that she was a necromancer. So I really think that's going to be really important to the story, and I think it's going to be in terms of bringing someone back to life. I could see it at this point being Sophie, the rebel who we're not really sure is dead or alive or not, one of the Thunderbirds. I could see that. I could see it being one of the main cast of characters in here. I could also see it, well, this is a stretch, but based on how freaking popular Danica is in the fandom, could be Danica. That's the wildest one, but I definitely think that necromancy is going to pay off somehow. just because it's mentioned in such a throwaway manner. And especially I feel like in Throne of Glass, a lot of little details like that were mentioned in previous books, or like the first couple books of the series, were brought back in a really big way. So yeah, I'm trying to do updates every 100 pages or so. There's a lot. I feel like towards the end I'm gonna want to get a live reaction to things that happen, because Sarah J Maas's endings are always like very, very action-packed and explosive for like the last 200, 150 pages or so. So yes, I have a whole weekend to read. I do have Monday off, which is exciting. So I will be updating back again later. Going to start my Saturday off, take the dog on a walk, get in a workout, and then sit down and read some more of this. So I will talk to you all around page 300 or so, but I am really enjoying this so far, which is so exciting because one of my most anticipated releases of the year. It's always exciting to have it really be like meeting your expectations. So I will talk to y'all later. So it is Sunday morning and I just made it to chapter 36, which is almost to page 400. So thought I would hop on and talk about this because I'm interested. I'm very, very interested in how this is going to go. And I will say, I really do think that there's a big chance that Danica might come back. I think she might come back at this point in time. And I know that's kind of like a very out there guess, but I honestly, this is the second book in a series where this character has been dead since potentially page 70, I think, in the first book. She's been dead this whole time, and she still, in the second book, takes up so much page time. She has so much character development and continued character development, and we're constantly finding out more things about her that could influence the story. I don't think it's very far-fetched. It's very far-fetched, but I don't think it's that far-fetched. So that's like my shoot the moon sort of thing going on in terms of predictions, because we're talking a lot about Danica and learning new things about Danica, and honestly, I don't see what the point would be to continue to have her this much centered in this story and her driving the plot this much with her being dead, because there are easier ways to do it with living characters that would almost make for a more action-packed story in here. Because I have noticed the past couple of chapters have been very much all of our characters getting together, figuring out these like trail of breadcrumbs and clues, and putting together information that Danica left behind. So I think that it would have been a lot easier to have some of these revelations coming from someone who's alive. So I don't know. She's just in here a lot. So I don't know, it'd be cool. I liked Danica from what we saw of her living and like the flashbacks. So I feel like that would not be an unpopular thing to do. Definitely unexpected and maybe kind of tropey, but like not a unpopular decision. And then the second thing I wanted to briefly touch upon that I just thought was interesting, and I don't think necessarily it's going to lead anywhere, but I do think in terms of character and just names, which I know Sarah J Maas spends a lot of time on, I think it's very interesting. So in one of Hunt's chapters, I noticed this, how we have all of these bad characters, and we've got like the Hind and the Harpy, and we have the Hound. We have all of these very short one-syllable H names: the Hound, the Hind, the Harpy, and then we have Hunt. And it has been mentioned in here that characters, like large characters like the Underking and like the Kings of Hell, keep calling Hunt Orion, which is his actual name. And he keeps correcting them, saying, it's Hunt, only my mother called me Orion. I just think that's so interesting that I noticed it when they were at like the gathering of angels where the two Asteri are going to get married pretty much in their meeting beforehand. I noticed that all of those characters and Hunt have very, very similar nicknames because obviously their names aren't that, but they go by it. And Hunt's name isn't Hunt, but he goes by Hunt. And they're also similar. And I was reading a couple sentences in a row where they were just all talked about and Hunt was talked about too. And I was like, that's very confusing to have if there's nothing to come out of that. Again, I feel like Charlie from It's Always Sunny with like the board with all the pins behind me, but like it's a choice, right? Like I'm not the only one who thinks that's a choice to have all of those H names and then have a character whose name is Orion go by Hunt. It's interesting. I'm not saying that I would like the implications of that, but I definitely don't like it because it is very confusing reading about all of these characters and then just throwing Hunt in as well. Kind of makes him seem like he's grouped in with those characters. Don't like the implications of what that might be, but also we're kind of seeing Hunt is the most reluctant to get in on this rebel action. He thinks every single point of view chapter of his, he's thinking about whether or not he should whistleblow on the whole operation. So maybe. I mean, that could be some drama at the end of this book that he's trying to save Bryce no matter what, and he would rather give up secrets in a rebellion or give up other people that he's friends with to save Bryce. That could be a thing. That could be a little bit foreshadowed because I really, really would not love that. I also really don't love how we're seeing in his point of view how we're going back on Shahar and he's saying that like it actually wasn't like soulmates or he wasn't actually in love with her, he was infatuated with her. Which I don't think needs to happen. I think you can have deep romantic emotional love connections. Like I think the characters can, and then still fall in love with someone to make it count. Like Bryce and Hunt are talking about how they've never been in love with anyone before the other, and while that is very romantic, I don't think it's less romantic to have Hunt have a huge heartbreak with Shahar dying and then years and years and years later being able to find love again. I think that's very romantic as well. So I don't love how we're going back on it and saying that Shahar was essentially kind of, we get the implication that she was using him or she wasn't as much in love with Hunt as he was with her, because the first book definitely makes it seem like they are in love. So I don't love that. That's just very nitpicky, but I'm enjoying the rest of it. I'm especially enjoying how we're getting background on a bunch of different characters that we see very, very briefly in the first book and we're seeing more of in this one. Particularly, actually, I've been calling him Ethan, but I think it's technically Ethan because it's Ethan with an I instead of an E. I don't know. I'll probably keep calling him Ethan because that's just how my brain reads it when I'm reading this book. Also, I like seeing more of Declan and Flynn and just getting to see some more characters that are very charming but were in the background kind of move up to the foreground. So yes, I'm gonna keep reading more, but those were just my thoughts that I was having while I was reading this, and I do feel like I'm in the middle of like some lower points of the action and it's gonna kick up in a big way very soon, so I'm intrigued. Got big plans to finish a lot of this book today. So yeah, I will start reading and I will talk to you all later. I just got to part 3 and it's page 530 something. So I'm more than halfway through. I don't really have too much to update since like the last 100 pages or so, other than the fact that they did briefly mention that necromancers, when they bring people back to life, it's not the person, it's just the husk of their body apparently. So my whole hypothesis about Danica coming back, not going to be a thing. However, we have been hearing so much about hidden wolf bloodlines and we're following Ethan a lot of the time, and he just found out that one of the oracles, I think there's this sorcerer that has a bunch of different people enslaved, and one of them was a dragon, and he rescued a bunch of fire sprites and a dragon. So that's really cool, seeing that like new creatures are continuously being introduced in here, which is cool. I'm interested to see if she's going to become a bigger character. It sounds like it. Ariadne, she sounds pretty cool, but he wants to rescue other people, and one of those veneer that is enslaved is a wolf, and he doesn't know anything about her, and she doesn't know anything about herself because she was taken from her family. Her family sold her to this person when she was a very young wolf pup, and all Ethan really can tell about her is that she would have been an alpha. She is an alpha wolf, but she's held in captivity with pretty much no way out of it. But he's really invested in trying to break her out of this situation. And I think that could be the connection between all of Danica's investigations about bloodlines, because we see Ethan's kind of struggling it with himself. Other people like Bryce have been struggling with it too, that the wolves are not really doing so great in terms of organization, because the Prime seems like a decent leader of the wolves, but he's very, very old, and we all know that Sabine is just not it. So I'm wondering if that wolf is a part of that bloodline, which would be the same bloodline as Danica. So I could see that happening. I definitely think that Ethan is going to kind of find his purpose soon. He's very rudderless throughout this for a lot of reasons, particularly because of the fact that also Bryce and Hunt have found that they are mates. So I think that that's going to be pretty important. He's going to rescue this wolf. She's going to be someone important. And I think he's either going to, like, they're going to try and rule, like change the wolf system, overhaul that system together, or she's going to be like the ruler of the wolves, which actually might make sense because it is like a dynasty. So the Prime was Danica's grandfather, and then Sabine, then Danica. If this wolf has claim to the wolf Prime ship, the wolf throne, then she could take over and really help the wolves and get Sabine out of the picture. So that's actually what I think is going to happen. I think that's going to be the link between Danica and all of her research and why she keeps being brought up in conversation, and just different things about her and getting more clues about her and her powers. I think we're getting all of that now, so that when this wolf, when they get to know her better, I think they're gonna bust her out of slavery and kind of take her under their wing. I think that now that we have all this knowledge about Danica's powers and Danica's bloodline, we'll start to slowly see that this unnamed wolf is going to be a part of that same bloodline. That's my theory on that. As for the other things, also I feel like Bryce and Hunt are definitely kind of taking like the back seat in the story almost. I feel like we've almost gotten more of Hunt's perspective than Bryce's perspective, and just other different characters' perspectives. Like I feel like we've gotten more of like Rune and Ethan, especially in part 2, than we do of Bryce's own point of view, which I'm not mad at. I'm really intrigued to find out who Agent Daybright is, because I definitely think that she and Rune kind of have this back and forth going on that's very interesting, and I just want to find out who she is and just kind of see how the rebellion's going to get restructured, because we're seeing that Pippa is not the person for the job, and that it's just not going to be a good scenario if the rebellion goes with her as one of the figureheads. And pretty much at this point in the narrative, most of our main group of characters is now on the run because the Hind saw them kind of entangling with the rebels. So Bryce and her friends are at a bad spot with Pippa and Ophium and the rebels, and also the Hind has kind of figured out that they might be a part or helping at least in some way the rebels, so they're kind of hiding out, hiding low right now. I'm unsure if they're going to be on the run for for the rest of this book or not. We'll have to see, but I'm very intrigued to see what part 3 holds. Again, I am more than halfway through this. I think about 60% of the way through this one. I have just a little over 200 or so pages to go, so I'm intrigued. I'm gonna keep reading. I don't think I'll finish this tonight, but I definitely will get maybe another 100 pages or so in this tonight. So those are my thoughts currently. I'm really intrigued to see if any of like my theories are going to pan out at this point in time, and I will talk to you all later. So excuse the lighting, very ambiance-y, but this is going to be a very, very quick update. I'm on page 700. This is about 800 pages, so I am going to be entering the final stretch tonight. Very exciting. I am quite intrigued to see what the final showdown in this book is going to be, because all of the things that I had maybe anticipated being like the events that were going to be the end of this book have already kind of happened. So very intrigued for that. Lots of reveals in the last few chapters, which I have really been enjoying. They've really come out of nowhere, but then when I think about it for a while, it makes sense. But definitely some shocking revelations, definitely ones that I enjoy. Danica is still playing a huge part in this, in even more ways than one. I'm really glad, honestly, that Hunt and Bryce have finally decided to trust Baxian, because I've felt this whole entire book that he has been trustworthy, so it's nice to kind of get that confirmation. Definitely a lot of twists and turns along the way. Very intriguing. 100 pages. I'm not really sure what's gonna go down, but I'm very invested. I'll probably try and finish this tonight. I just feel like the last couple of chapters are going to be very, very explosive, just based on some of the revelations that we've been getting throughout this. So I will talk to you all when I'm done. So it has been a couple of days since my last vlog, since I finished the book until now. This is going to be like the last update, and I kind of wanted to do it this way because I wanted to think about all I was going to talk about in this last section of the video and just my thoughts, and I wanted my thoughts to be a little bit divorced from the thoughts that I had right as I finished it, and kind of sit on it and think on it a little bit. So here is that. I think you can tell from my reactions to the last couple of pages, I tried to vlog pretty much continuously the last 100 pages of this book. The ending was insane. I think it was an insane ending that we all maybe saw coming but didn't see coming and didn't expect. And even if you were one of the individuals that was guessing maybe, you know, the multiverse would happen, then you maybe didn't even guess that it would happen in this way. So yes, the ending, definitely an ending. I'm really glad. I heard that this got spoiled for a lot of people before the book even came out. Someone posted like the last page of the book, something like that, which is ridiculously rude. So I am very glad I didn't get that spoiled for me. It was definitely an ending that I was very shocked by. As you can see, I have my book behind me. It actually came the day after I finished it. So I was very thankful that I had access to my library's copy, because this is definitely one where I wanted to read it at the very beginning and not get spoiled, because I had a feeling there were going to be a lot of very big things in this one that, you know, whether intentional or not, you know, if you like something and this has such a big, massive fan base, people can't help but talk about it. So I knew one way or another I might get spoiled. So I am really glad that I read this as soon as possible. So let's talk briefly first about the things that I don't really think worked for me. And I'm glad, again, why I took some time to really articulate some of these thoughts before diving in right after finishing that book. I really wish some of the characters that I wish we had more of. I wish we had more Jessica. I wish we had more Adis. I don't actually think that we got him at all throughout this book, right? At least according to the end, I don't think we got him himself. I think, you know, someone was impersonating him in this book. I don't think we got him at all, which was a bummer. So I just wish, and I know we had some Jessica in Fenn conversations, but I just think she's an endlessly fascinating character, and I just really wish we would have gotten to see more, because I feel like she knows a lot of information, and moving forward, I really want to see how much information that she knows. Second, I don't know if this, you know, I don't know if I want to call these like cons or really just things that I maybe wish could have been done a little bit differently. Danica had probably the most character development in here, and she is a character who has been dead since the beginning of the first book, and really the secondary character that has had the most character development throughout this whole book series, and I just feel like that is, the further we go along, the further that's going to be a crutch for uncovering new information and character development and world development, because while I think I really would have loved Danica as a character, she is dead. So unless she's coming back, it is frustrating getting all this character development on a character that can't contribute any more to the story, where we have other characters that supposedly are also very close to Bryce, like Fury and Juniper, who don't have that amount of page time and who don't have that amount of character development that Danica still is continuing to get. And I just feel like there's so many revelations with her that there really can't be too many more, because otherwise can you even claim that Bryce and Danica knew each other at all? I mean, she's a very young person. I think she was like 25, right? 25-ish when she died. So that's very young. And to keep getting all of these revelations that no one knew about her except for this one person who comes to Bryce to give her this information, I don't think we can rely on that anymore. Again, I like Danica as a character, but if she's not coming back, we gotta let her rest in peace for the sake of other characters getting development in her stead. I was excited to see more of Therian at first. I thought he was a very interesting character in the first book. However, I thought his point of view a lot of times felt very repetitive, and ultimately he didn't really do much. I mean, he was with Bryce and all of the other people throughout the plot, but when he was in the underground palace or his own struggles, he just never felt fully fleshed out. And a lot of times his chapters, when he wasn't hanging around anyone else, felt very boring to me. They just felt very repetitive. So I don't know how he could play a part in the third book, but honestly, I don't necessarily see him needing his own point of view. again, very interesting, but it just felt very, very repetitive, and this is a very large book, so Therion's chapters were really the only ones where I felt a little bit of a lag and a little bit of the page count. He just wasn't very well developed to me, and it just felt like the same kind of themes getting repeated again and again and again in his chapters, so I was kind of bummed how that played out. And then just finally, I feel like this one is pretty middle book-ish. The first one, I felt so much emotional connection to the characters and to the plot and to the journey that they were on, especially at like the end, figuring out who killed Danica. And there's just a lot of emotional payoff and a lot of emotional ties that I felt emotionally invested in House of Earth and Blood. In this one, I never really got there. I never really got to that threshold of really getting upset or emotionally torn up about these characters. However, all of the things that we learn are so important. So while I did enjoy the book, I feel like, you know, as the series, when it's done as a whole, I feel like this one, especially rereading, we're gonna see just how much needed to be in here to kind of build up the conflict, build up the world, give characters needed information that is needed in the story, but I just never felt that emotional payoff. So kind of middle booky, but not in a bad way. Just, you know, sometimes it's very common to have in series for a reason. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I definitely think though in this one, upon even when the series is ended, going back and seeing all the foreshadowing that's in this one and all the information that we need. I feel like Sarah J. Maas is really good at hiding little bits of information throughout the series that's going to be very important in the last installation of any of her series, where I feel like it's going to be interesting reading this one and finding just how many of those nuggets of information that we're going to need. I feel like there's going to be a lot of that one in here, but I can definitely see how people might see that this one might be a little bit middle bookish. So, you know, those are kind of my little critiques about this one. Moving on to the pros. I loved seeing more from Rune, more from Ethan, more from other characters that were kind of in the background in the first book. If I had to pinpoint a character, I would have to say, honestly, I think some of Rune's and some of Ethan's chapters were some of my very favorites in the book, and I just really enjoyed especially getting to know Rune better, and I just really enjoyed him and the things that he did, and hopefully his future continuation in this series, you know. Also the twists, some of them I thought it was a really good mix of ones that I never would see coming, and then ones where I was maybe able to pick up on them based on clues left a couple of chapters before they were revealed. I like that. I like a good mix of things that keep me on my toes and are just completely shocking, and then I like the rewards of being able to guess some twists. I think the one that I was able to guess most, I don't think I filmed this. I did guess who was before that was revealed, quite a while before it was revealed. I don't think I ever mentioned that, but then I also kind of got where we were going with Ethan's story, and then the Fendir bloodline. Also guessed that. Things that I didn't guess, how exactly this book was going to tie into ACOTAR. I didn't guess that. I feel like upon rereading this one, the things that I didn't see coming, I feel like I could maybe pick up on clues throughout the book before those are revealed that kind of make them make sense. So none of the twists really felt like too cheap or too shocking for shock value's sake for me. And also just hoping for more Hypaxia. She has not actually gotten too much page time in either the first book or this book, but I really enjoy what we've seen of her. I think she's going to be increasingly more important as the series goes on. I want to see more from her. I'd love to see more point of view chapters from her. I think maybe we'll get that in this third installation. Hopefully. I think she's a really cool character. I love the character development we got in here when we did get to see her. So I'm really hoping for more of her in the books to come. Okay, so my camera died, so apologies for any changes in lighting, anything like that, but I am almost done. I did want to talk about the ending and how it kind of makes Crescent City and ACOTAR very, very interconnected, and I'm very on the fence about this one. I have read Crescent City, or House of Earth and Blood was my very first book that I ever read by Sarah J. Maas, and it is my favorite for a lot of reasons, but I will say then going back and then reading everything else after House of Earth and Blood, ACOTAR is by far my least favorite of anything that Sarah J. Maas has ever written. I enjoyed the original trilogy just fine, really didn't care for the novella, and I really didn't care for a lot of A Court of Silver Flames. I was very hot and cold about that book. I really enjoyed a lot of things that were introduced, and then really hated a lot of character things that were changed, as well as just like character arcs, and just the last two things that have come out in ACOTAR just have not been it for me, and I've really not liked them. So I was very shocked to read the ending, and it makes me a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. However, I do respect the hustle of a multiverse moment, where I do believe that I don't think it came out of the blue. I think Sarah J Maas has been working up to this for quite some time, and especially with the way that Bryce kind of falls into the world of the inner circle at the end that you see there. I'm definitely not giving up hope for it yet. I'm almost hoping that a lot of things that I didn't like, or that I don't like about the ACOTAR series, can maybe be rectified a little bit and fixed through a continuation through a House of Earth and Blood or Crescent City series. I don't know when like other books are going to be coming out, but ideally what I would like, and what I would think would make the most sense for a crossover that has so many books, would be to have the next ACOTAR book come out first and have Bryce be introduced in that one, and have her, when she is in the world of ACOTAR, be primarily in an ACOTAR book, and then maybe having her go back at the end of that, or bridging the gap to the third Crescent City book. I am a little bit nervous to see where this goes, because obviously Crescent City has been marketed as adult from the get-go, whereas A Court of Thorns and Roses, that series, I do believe it did start very much as YA. Even if it wasn't intended to be YA, it was definitely marketed as YA or even new adult, and then it kind of changed to where it is now, very adult series. So I definitely worry, because Crescent City is very adult. There are two very adult books. I mean, obviously ACOTAR is also now a very adult series, so I do worry that just with that blending of very different books, and especially, I mean, if you read A Court of Thorns and Roses, the romance in there, and then just immediately like take it with the romance or just like the smutty scenes that are in this book, definitely not for the same like intended audience. Obviously that evolves over time. I'm just a little nervous with how they're all going to cohesively fit in together. I'm sure that Sarah J Maas will pull it off, because again, there have been hints since Kingdom of Ash has come out that these have all kind of been in the same sort of multiverse. So I don't think this was something that was just kind of created, like when the author sat down to write this book, I don't think it was something that was just created for that. I definitely think it's probably an idea, especially with the kind of changes in brand loyalty and like creator loyalty. I've noticed, for example, like Marvel is really leaning into this as well, where you have to really buy into almost like all of a creator's work to enjoy any of their work. I feel like the first couple Marvel movies, you could pretty much watch any of them as a standalone and enjoy them, whereas now you're not going to be able to just go into a movie theater and watch the latest Marvel movie without having seen all of the other movies, plus all of the Disney shows on Disney Plus, like the streaming content. It's a whole lot of content that you can't just watch it casually. You have to kind of go into it having all of this information. And now I feel like with that sort of Marvel model, if you will, I feel like we could see a lot of other books and a lot of other authors choosing this route. No shade, I think it'll probably work just fine if that's an organic idea that you have for a while. And obviously, like romance and contemporary authors have been doing it for a long time, where you'll see series or even books that are not connected where you'll see other characters in the series. I don't think I've ever read a series that connects to another not related series by an author, at least not yet. So I definitely think it's a very ambitious thing. It's obviously, I feel like, a very risky move, because I know I'm not alone in having a series that I vastly prefer than other series to Sarah J Maas. I feel like, you know, people who are ride or die ACOTAR, I feel like, you know, they're not the same people who are ride or die Throne of Glass, not the same people who are like Crescent City's biggest fans. So it'll be really interesting, especially because I think ACOTAR and Crescent City are just so different right now, because their focuses are very different. I would say Crescent City, even though there is a lot of romance, still a lot of romance and smutty scenes and things like that, very much a fantasy with a high fantasy plot. Whereas I feel like with each installation of ACOTAR and no shade, against this. I'm not saying this as a slight, but just like a tonal thing. I feel like ACOTAR is definitely more, especially with the past two installations, definitely romance is coming before the fantasy. So just two very, very different feels that are going to be mashed together. Just personally, I feel like I would enjoy more of the crossover happening in like an ACOTAR installation, just because I don't think I actually really have like a genuinely compelling reason. Just I feel like I have lower expectations when it comes to ACOTAR books, and I don't go into them feeling like I'm going to love them, so I feel like I won't be as disappointed if this crossover doesn't go as well as I'm hoping it does. I don't know, or just upon a reread, I don't like a lot of people in the inner circle at the moment, especially with things that they did in A Court of Silver Flames. So I'm just very nervous about spending a large part of time with them. In particular, I think it should happen with Bryce being with the inner circle. It should be in an ACOTAR book, just because that cast of characters, they're all in the ACOTAR series except for Bryce. Whereas I feel like Crescent City, we have so many more characters to follow, that having the Crescent City book 3 be the one where we're getting all the inner circle stuff and Bryce in that world, while also following, you know, Rune and Hunt and Ethan, and we have a ton of people that we need to follow in a different world. So I feel like it would make most sense to have the next ACOTAR installation be the one with most of the crossover between Bryce and the inner circle, and then have, you know, something returning to fight off the forces that be in Crescent City. Because again, I just feel like we have, I like the cast of characters better in Crescent City, and I just feel like bringing in so many, I know so many people absolutely love the inner circle. I would just be nervous. I don't want them to take over page time and character time in a Crescent City book, and have some characters that I really love from Crescent City be overshadowed. But that's just me. I mean, she's a professional, she's a best-selling writer, so I'm sure that she has a plan and it's going to turn out really well. But I would be lying if I said that's something that I'm like very curious about and very interested to see where that goes with this series. So yeah, definitely let me know your thoughts down below on how you feel about it. I know this crossover, I feel like it's going to be something that's very much a hot topic of debate and something people are going to have very strong feelings about. So definitely let me know down below what you think about it. But if you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you liked the content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!